Welcome to Catholic Ed for All, your weekly insight into topics of special education in Catholic schools. My name is Dr. Raul Escarpio, and I invite you to join me each week as we learn how to be more inclusive in Catholic schools and continue to live out St. John Paul II's message of open wide the doors to Christ. Many thanks go out to RCL Benziger, who is generously sponsoring this podcast. RCL Benziger enriches the worldwide Catholic community by providing the most engaging and highest quality resources, programs, and services rooted in the rich and diverse tradition of the Catholic faith. And now, on to our show. On the show today, I am joined by Mrs. Mary Pat Donoghue, Executive Director of the Secretariat of Catholic Education for the United States Conference for Catholic Bishops. Hello, Mary Pat. Welcome to the show and thanks for being here.
Good morning, Raul. Thank you very much for having me. It is a privilege and an honor to talk with you today.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I am very excited about this episode. I really am. So, Mary Pat, can you please tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Oh, sure, Raul. Well, I've spent my entire career in Catholic education. I was a teacher, and then I became a vice principal, and then a principal. During my time as principal, the parochial school that I led was facing near certain closure. So we really rallied the community, transitioned the school to a Catholic classical curriculum. It's been wildly successful. So we went from a school that was losing enrollment every year to a school that now has wait lists in every grade and is in the process of expanding itself. And that experience led me into another phase of working in Catholic education, which was some time as a consultant for the Institute for Catholic Liberal Education, which brought me all over the country, visiting schools and dioceses and offering support and workshops to teachers and principals, most especially focusing on Catholic classical curriculum, but also even on the steps and the process of bringing a school and a community through significant change. So I did that for a few years, and then I landed here at the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Wow. So, okay, I always ask my guests who say that they were a teacher before. What level did you teach? What grade level? Kids, all that?
Sure. Primarily, I was in fifth grade, but I did did third grade at one point, then fifth through eighth grade at different points. But mostly, I was in fifth grade.
Oh, fantastic! As a former fifth grade teacher, I love fifth grade. So I mean, they're the best. My
Really,
joke, yes, my joke is that they start understanding sarcasm at
that's
that
right.
age. So,
That's right.
which really helps. You were talking
Yes.
about classical curriculum. For those that don't know, what does that look like?
Well, essentially, it's sort of a return to the church's intellectual tradition, which means an emphasis on the cohesive story of history, salvation history, and Western history. Also, an emphasis on great books, development of literacy, teaching of Latin, approaching math and science in a way that replicates sort of the way it has been done historically, trying to preserve a sense of wonder in those two subject areas, and essentially a return to the ancient trivium, the grammar, logic, and rhetoric phases of education, which is really about equipping children with the tools of learning. So that's kind of a quick thumbnail of what we mean by classical.
Well, we could just have a show just about that. So we might have to do that in the future. So what does the executive director of the Secretariat of Catholic Education for the USCCB do on a daily basis? Wow, I had to take a deep breath before I said your whole title, Mary Pat.
Absolutely. As do I some days. But no, my job is primarily dedicated to supporting the Committee on Catholic Education, which is the committee headed currently by Bishop John Quinn from Winona, Minnesota. And the Education Committee of Bishops are the body that essentially puts forth the vision and the priorities for Catholic education. And when we talk about Catholic education, we're really talking about K-12, higher education, campus ministry. My office is also concerned with the certification of lay ecclesial ministers as well. So all of those things are the purview of the committee. So I work to support the committee's efforts, which means that I am collaborating often with other offices. For example, we're working on offering resource support for an upcoming pastoral letter against racism. So I'm working with the Office of Justice, Peace, and Human Development on that particular element. So we work collaboratively with evangelization and catechesis as they're reviewing the catechism and the catechetical materials. I am, of course, overseeing the tremendous work done here in my own office by my assistant directors. I have one who is very focused on legislative policy as it affects Catholic education. So we work very hard to promote parental choice and to inform our diocesan folk and our parents about the programs and the initiatives that are available to them. So that's a little peek into my day.
So you're saying that they have upcoming pastoral letters on racism and all those. Can you add any more of the vision for that committee as far as in terms of students and their education?
Well, essentially, our focus there is really on helping our kids from the time they're very small develop an understanding of the nature and purpose and dignity of the human person, which means that they have to have an understanding of the nature of the Creator and our relationship to the Creator. We're also emphasizing the development of the understanding of historical facts that have impacted this, using primary source material, using literature, and those sorts of things to help our kids understand it a little more deeply so that they can think more deeply about it and change direction as we're moving forward. As we often, have come to realize here in this work, racism is a social construct, which means it can be deconstructed. And that's part of the work that we're trying to support our teachers in accomplishing.
Amen. Amen. So on that thread, on that vein, when we're looking about the dignity of every person, we also have to look at exceptional learners, kids with special needs, the ones that are
Absolutely.
the Lord's special creation. What would you like to accomplish for Catholic special education in Catholic schools? What would your office like to see in terms of special education?
Well, first of all, as you say, Raul, I think the most important thing is educating people around the nature of this. So to me, this is an extension of our pro-life position, as you just stated, that these children who have different learning needs are an expression of God's beauty and His dignity. They share in that, which means we have not just an obligation, but really, frankly, a tremendous privilege that God has given us to care for them. So my office is interested in awakening all Catholics to this important understanding. And, whether parents choose Catholic schools, whether they homeschool, whether their children are in public or charter schools, we certainly support parents in finding an environment that best meets the needs of those children. Now, obviously, coming from a Catholic school background, what I would like to see is a deepening of the understanding around that from our Catholic school administrators and teachers, and then taking the kinds of steps needed in our schools to make an inclusive environment for students who have special needs. When I was principal at a school, as I mentioned to you, a school that was on the verge of closure because it was such a financial disaster, when we did transition this to this new curriculum, I absolutely insisted that we have a special educator on staff. The school now has 2 certified special ed teachers to serve the needs of the diverse learners who come. I think as Catholic educators, we have simply got to start seeing that position as critical in the way that we see the PE teacher or the way that we see the first grade teacher. It's just a critical part of our ability to implement the program and serve those children who need it the most.
Amen. I mean, what a way to frame it. In other words, the special education teacher or the student are no different than the PE teacher or the child taking PE. I mean, what a beautiful way to frame it. So, with
Yep.
that in mind, obviously, your office and in a larger part, the USCCB fully support this. I don't want to speak for you, for all of you,
Well,
but am I to assume that?
Well, sir, I mean, I don't have anything in front of me from the bishop saying this, but I
Right.
can tell you just my conversations with Bishop Quinn and some of the initiatives that we're undertaking. We're working with researchers to sort of take a better survey on IDEA implementation across the country. So yeah, I would say this is a priority. And as I said to you, I think it's not just an education priority, but it's a priority that also derives from the pro-life office. So I think, yeah, I can say, and for me personally, it's always been a priority. So
And I can also accompany that statement by saying that it should move on into the churches as well and practice a full inclusion of all people with disabilities. I know the USCCB has a statement with persons with disabilities coming from Cardinal DiNardo and Archbishop Kurtz that they have a
yeah,
statement for including. So I know that they're very passionate about that as well. So
yes.
with that being said, what are some supports that your office can offer schools that might want to look at a program to include students with special needs?
I think the main thing is to take a look at some of the excellent work that's already being done in Catholic schools and to highlight that, to direct other educators towards that, because we do have some incredible good work being done out in the field. And then also, I think to provide, even a catechetical understanding of why this is critically important. Once we do have some more data amassed, we'll be sharing that widely, of course, too. And then just to help people begin thinking about it in terms of an important part of our mission. We talk about, we as Catholic educators, you'll often hear us say things like, we bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to our children. And I can just tell you, Raul, when I was principal at St. Jerome Academy in Hyattsville, Maryland, as I told you, that the special ed services were critically important to me. And the teacher that I hired to direct the program, his name is Edward Beal. He's excellent. He and I were talking about what would our philosophy be? How are we going to frame this? And, he chose the gospel story of Zacchaeus. If you remember the story of Zacchaeus,
Yes.
wanted to see Jesus, but he was too short. He had short stature, so he had to climb a tree. And Mr. Beale's philosophy was that we are obligated to provide the tree.
Amen.
And so
Yes.
that would be something I would share widely with my fellow Catholic educators.
Hashtag be the tree.
Be the tree. You
Be
got
the.
it.
I love it. I love it. So as our show winds down for today, Mary Pat, the last question I'd like to ask you is, what should Catholic special education look like besides be the tree?
Besides being the tree, yes. Well, that's the philosophy. So it starts with that understanding, and then I think it needs to involve a couple things. First and foremost, Catholic special education, and I would say special education teachers have an important role in the continuing education and formation of classroom teachers. So they stand as advocates, really, for their children. That's kind of the way we did it at St. Jerome Academy. We had a weekly, school student support team meeting so that concerns could be brought so that we don't have children falling through the cracks. Because, one thing, Raul, is that when we think about special education students, we often think about, kids who are coming to us already identified as such. But the reality is that they're already among us. And we need to do a better job of identifying them and then offering the support. So I would say the role of the special education teacher in being the advocate and facilitator of that is important. Secondly, I think we want to work to define goals and growth for students on a very individual basis. So some students will have programs that include more pulled out time in the resource room. Some will have more, inclusion in the regular classroom with support. Others will look different. It may just be a check-in kind of thing. But I would also say that, and the third thing is the bringing the parents in and helping parents to see us as their partners, that we accompany them in this journey. And, all of us have had the experience, I've certainly had the experience, even with 2 special ed teachers on staff, of having to come to the conclusion that we were not able to meet the needs of particular students. And when that happens, what my philosophy then was, it's not a question of, okay, this is no longer important to us. Then we transition to supporting the parent and offering our assistance in any way that we can to help the parent navigate the programs that are offered, in the public sector and with public schools. So, I think it's a hands-on. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but so it needs to be, advocacy, education, and accompaniment of families.
Absolutely. Including the families. I love the way that you put that at the end. So, Mary Pat, I want to thank you for being on the show today. I wish you nothing but prayers and blessings as the executive director. You have our prayers, and thank you so much for being here. Many blessings.
You are most welcome. It was a pleasure, and I hope I can come back sometime.
Oh, absolutely. Be careful what you ask for. It might just happen. So, have a great day.
You too, Raul. Thanks so much.
Well, that's it for this week. If this podcast was a blessing to you, can you please head over to iTunes and subscribe and give us a review or a rating? It really does help other Catholic educators find the podcast and use it as a resource. Thanks again to the amazing people at RCL Benziger for generously sponsoring this podcast. Check out their new resource for Catholic schools, Blessed Are We, Faith in Action, which enables teachers to share the love of Christ with children who have special needs. Visit rclbenziger.com to learn more. Join me again next time as we continue to advance God's kingdom by including all of God's children in Catholic schools and faith formation. Until then, this is Dr. Raul Escarpio. Thanks for listening, and may God bless your day.